Welcome into another edition of the Postgame, season 23-24. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley. That, of course, is the expert Dewey Burke. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com, and also Congruity HR, a new sponsor to the show. First time for Congruity on the Postgame. Check them out for all your HR and payroll needs. Of course, a North Carolina-based company, but national presence. If you're a listener or watcher with a small business, go to congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. Get your free assessment, and they'll handle everything you possibly could need to support your folks while you grow your business. That's congruityhr.com. Dewey, my man, what's happening?
Life is good. The only good thing about it getting cold is that Carolina starts playing because I can't play golf anymore. So there better be something else to do, and that's watch our boys play. So it's a good day.
Well, it's going to be 80 here in North Carolina Tuesday and Wednesday, I think, and then it'll probably be 40 after that. So you know all about those weather changes. But you're right, it is time for North Carolina basketball. They get the win today against Radford, 86-70. Just an overall takeaway from you, and then we'll get down into it and sort of flesh it out, maybe good, bad, ugly, positive, negative, whatever, however we want to do it. It'll be fresh. It is unplanned and unscripted. But what's your overall take watching that one?
It felt like a first game. It really did. You know, some jitters, some pieces that you were happy to see. He played a lot of guys, which obviously we talked a lot about last year, that the bench was short. And so a lot of guys got some meaningful minutes. Saw what you'd expect, I think, out of Armando and RJ, the old reliables, if you will. I thought Radford really actually made some extremely difficult shots, especially in the first half, to keep them in it. I didn't think our defense was as bad as maybe it seemed or felt to folks watching. I thought they made just a lot of shots with a high degree of difficulty and then kind of cooled off in the second half and allowed us to extend it. Plenty to work on, some great flashes from Elliot. You see the burst, you see the vision, and you see that he's a freshman. I think he might have started the game with 3 turnovers in almost the first 4 or 5 times he touches the ball. So he is still a freshman and a young freshman at that. But you can see the potential. You can see the burst, like I said. And we do have a lot of pieces, interesting pieces. You saw some of the new guys hit shots early, which was nice to see. You saw the intensity that I think we're expecting from Cormac Ryan, and what he was annoying to play against is now on our side, if you would, kind of being a pest out there. I think Harrison's showed some versatility, but it felt like a first game. And my other thought as I was watching these Radford kids hit all these shots is, remember, they just went through a whole spring, summer, and fall of workouts too, getting better and making a ton of shots in the gym and getting up 1,000 shots. All the stuff that our guys were doing, they were doing too. And so they were excited. They were motivated, and they played that way. They made some good shots and hung in there. I think we played them again tomorrow. We might win by 35, but it was just that kind of first game feel. And I thought we found our way, and there's plenty to improve on, plenty on tape for Hubert to work with. And we'll get into the individuals more, but yeah, it felt like a first game.
Yeah, it sort of felt like an old Roy Williams game, right? I'm going to play a bunch of guys. I'm going to get guys some reps and get guys some minutes early, see how they do, and then we'll start sort of molding the lineup as we go. And, people sleep on a team like Radford. I mean, Brian Antoine was a 5-star that went to Villanova. I didn't catch why he's at Radford now, but that kid can play, and they've got some other guys that can play. Gone are the days of every team not in a Power 5 conference or even not in a G5 conference being terrible because of the portal and all that kind of stuff. And you see that. I mean, North Carolina benefits by the portal, but these other smaller teams do as well. Dewey, one person I want to sort of start with, and it might not be the one you would want to start with, but Jalen Washington, for a stretch there late in the second half, midway late second half, showed some aggressiveness and showed some things that could really help this team down the road if he can stack those type days.
You know what I did when he made those back-to-back aggressive plays? I looked right at the bench and I looked right at Sean. And I wanted to see what his reaction was, because obviously Sean coaches the bigs. And his enthusiasm for Jalen showing some aggressiveness and a little bit more want to than maybe we saw last year. Um, I imagine that's what Sean has been talking to him about. Even in his second year, he may not get a ton of shots just because of the dynamic of the roster and playing behind Armando. So how do you impact the game? You impact the game by out hustling, by getting offensive rebounds, getting loose balls, blocking shots, and getting on the floor for loose balls. And so that was a nice moment to see. He was the benefit also of some nice dump offs where he was able to put the ball in the basket. So I have high hopes for him. I was actually surprised. I mean, I've read everything and understand it, but I was surprised that Zayden got off the bench before him. That was an interesting data point. But obviously Zayden's earned it. By all accounts, he's been such a pleasant surprise. So, yeah, look, it's not enough to be big and skilled. Even against a team like Radford, it's just not enough at this level. You also have to play with a different mentality if you want to get minutes at this level. And so maybe he's beginning to figure that out. It'd be great because we need his size, we need his length. He's got great touch, he's got great feet, and he showed flashes last year. This was probably the piece that was missing. So it remains to be seen if he can bring that consistently. But like I said, it was interesting to see Sean's reaction to that because I just imagine he's been in his ear about playing a little bit harder.
And I can imagine having a guy like Zayden High out there who, I'll be honest, I didn't have high hopes or high expectations for him, but he's shown it. Like you said, he's earned some playing time, but even in practice, that is very beneficial for a guy like Jalen Washington to go up against somebody not named Armando Bacot and have to play. Let's go ahead and start at the top. We mentioned Armando. I mean, 25 and 13. I believe he had this is 69th double-double, something ridiculous number. Of course, he's a fifth-year guy now. But what did you see from him, Dewey? I saw pretty much the same guy with maybe a little bit quicker feet. What did you think from his play, at least in the first game, playing against smaller guys? He still has the ability to clean guys out of there and get some easy baskets. Probably needs to convert a little bit better at times on the easy ones, but what'd you see?
Yeah, he missed some easy ones. I mean, he could have easily had 30. But it's stress free, right? He knows who he is. He knows how to play. He knows how to get his. He knows how to carve out space, and he's great around the rim, offensive rebound wise. I just feel like he'll be really reliable. Obviously, he stepped out and shot the three that he didn't make, and that's been documented that he's been working on that. And maybe not threes, but 15, 18 footers. It'd be nice if he could catch and shoot those to keep the defense honest. But he just feels like a comfortable person to see the ball go into because he's been around so long. He's going to get to the line. He's going to offensive rebound. And he's going to finish around the rim most of the time. He missed a couple easy ones. So I don't know. It's like nothing he did was surprising. And that's not saying anything detrimental. It's just this is what we've come to expect. You know, kind of ho-hum 25 and however many rebounds he had, 13 or 14. And it could have been 32 and 15 just as easily because he missed some chippies. So they were smaller, were more gifted, as coach used to say. But I don't, if it was the first ACC game, it may not have been all that different. This is kind of who he is and seems like he'll be provided he's healthy. I thought he had good spring in his step. He looks fit. And, we got to have him healthy.
Yeah, he needs to stay healthy, but it's pretty easy, or it's pretty big comfort blanket to have a guy that's going to give you 20 and 13 basically every night.
We're spoiled.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bacot does it again, and I said he missed some chippies. He was 10 for 16, and he also
percentage was fine. He just to the naked eye, he missed like easy buckets. He could have been 13 for 16 maybe. Yeah. But yeah, we are fortunate to have such an experienced player. Nothing's going to rattle him. He knows everything to expect. Whether it's the opening game against Radford with half the stadium full or the game at Cameron, he's done everything, every single thing. And so nothing will faze him. So with health, I think this is what we expect.
Would you think of the entry passes? I felt like at times in his first 4 years, getting him fed the ball correctly and on time and in the right spot was a chore sometimes. I felt like tonight, especially with Elliot, with Cormac, I think Paxton got him one
And
in there.
Paxton. Yeah, Paxton
Yeah,
got him too. Yeah.
I think that's a big deal for a guy like Bacot.
It is, and this is not, I don't mean anything by this other than for the statement that it is. One of the things we struggled with Caleb Love was he was careless with the basketball. He was careless with the basketball. And so he, a lot of the times, if it wasn't RJ, was the one trying to get the ball into Armando, and that was not a strength of his. And so I think it was both a dedicated effort to get him the ball in positions to be successful. Um, and then also different guys making those passes that maybe that's a stronger part of their game. I also thought we had some interesting wrinkles in set plays. The opening possession, by way of example, where we ran Paxton off a little diagonal, and then we got a little high-low over the top to Bacot. We ran another sideline out-of-bounds play in second half around the 6-minute mark where we inbounded the ball on the bottom of the TV screen and ended up getting a bunny for Armando. Those are new sets. Those we have not seen. And so that was encouraging to me that they were trying to find some different ways with some rub screen action. And everybody focuses so much on the 3-point shot that when you have a post presence like Armando and you're running shooters off down screens and cross screens, I think the propensity defensively now in college basketball is to rush to the 3-point line to guard it, which leaves the, maybe from 8 feet under more open. And you see those over the top passes to Armando. Definitely at least 2, maybe even 3 of those were set plays, not just him clearing out space and getting a lob over the top. So that was an interesting thing to observe, some new sets. We also ran some more secondary stuff than we have in the past with Harrison at the 4. It's like old Coach Williams stuff that we haven't seen for a couple years, which was interesting as well. So I look forward to continuing to watch and see what they do offensively that's different. Less pick and rolls than we had the last 2 years and more flow and ball movement. So just interesting things to note. Only one game, but you asked the question about post entries, and I expanded it into other things offensively that I saw. But I look forward to watching more to see what else he's put in.
Yeah, that's why you're the expert here. We're talking with Dewey Burke, the post game in South Carolina. We're going to try to do these about 15 minutes after the horn on every game this year, folks. So if you are watching the Carolina game, then come to Inside Carolina's YouTube channel about 15 minutes after. Join Dewey and myself and everybody else on the staff that gets into these. Dewey, one guy you mentioned there, Harrison Ingram. I thought at times, and granted, it's one game against Radford, but I thought he looked like he could be the best player on this team, all-around best player. Is that just a hot take, or is he exactly what this team needs? Is sort of that glue, cohesive guy that can do a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I mean he's an imposing physical presence, isn't he? I mean, and Dan Bonner kept saying that on the coverage. 6'7", 230 pounds. He's a big, strong kid that can use both hands. He showed a couple catch and shoot threes. He got to the rim. He had a couple block shots. He also missed some bunnies. So, but I mean, from a pedigree perspective, say he'd been here the whole time as a 5-star. You'd say, well, yeah, he should be. He's a junior. He should be the best player on the team. He's a 5-star. But I think, I don't know if he underachieved at Stanford, but it maybe wasn't what he thought it would be. Most 5-stars ranked as high as him think they're going to the league after a year, and here he is in his 3rd year at his 2nd school. And so what I like about that is he probably feels like he has a little bit to prove. And so if he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder with the talent and the skill set that he has, absolutely he could be our best player. I mean, there aren't a lot of 6'7" guys walking around in college at that weight with that kind of athleticism that can use both hands, that can catch and shoot, that can guard all 5 positions, that can handle the ball. Most guys at that size and skill level are already at the next level for the most part. And so something has not totally clicked for his college career just yet. Maybe it happens here in Chapel Hill, but he's tantalizing, that's for sure. So I don't think it's a hot take. I think let's see if he can be consistent and do it at the ACC level.
Yeah, I love the way he communicates. I mean, he's a great interview, but he does it on the court. and I think that'll bode well for North Carolina. What else did you see? We don't need to go down every single player. We'll hit everybody in the early preseason. I thought RJ was RJ. I think Cormac Ryan, you mentioned him earlier. He's going to be that guy that, like you mentioned, and I've seen it over and over. If he played for the other team, you hate him. And I
Yeah.
think Bacot even referenced that in preseason media availability. But when he's on your team, I think Cormac, I thought Cormac, now this was a hot take, Dewey. I haven't told you this one. I said I thought Cormac Ryan could lead the team in scoring on an Inside Carolina podcast earlier for my quote unquote hot take. But this guy's good, and he's going to be good for North Carolina. What'd you see from him, Paxton Wojcik, and those guys out there when they were together?
Yeah. So a great data point I can give you. I played golf in July with Coach Hass, who recruited Cormac to Stanford. And then obviously Cormac left and went to Notre Dame. And when I asked him about him, he said, "You guys will love him." He said, "Everyone else will hate him. You guys will love him," which I think is accurate. He gives you a little bit of everything. Um, he's got good size, good length. He's an aggressive defender. You're never going to question his effort. One of the questions here in the live chat was, "Is Cormac shooting too fast?" Yeah, I mean, maybe. Yeah, he's a pretty excitable guy, and so there you go. And so, did he rush a few? Yeah, maybe. I thought he got his rhythm and settled down, evidenced by the shot fake one dribble three that he hit in front of the bench. That's a sign of a player that's under control, or has he rushed a couple in other parts of the game? But I think he's going to be, he's going to be your engine from an enthusiasm perspective. And if he shoots the ball well, then I don't know if he'll lead the team in scoring, but he could be the best 3-point shooter on the team. And we talked a lot last year about being starved for outside shots to fall so that Bacot had room to roam. And so you see Paxton hit a shot, you see Cormac hit a few, you see Harrison hit a few, RJ's going to hit a few. So we have to make shots because we do have a dominant post player that we want to get the ball into. And so hopefully Cormac shoots our highest percentage from three. And then everything else he gives you from a hustle and a defensive perspective. It's interesting to me because he's a guy that Coach Williams would have loved. When I watched the way he plays, his enthusiasm, his hustle, Coach would have loved to coach a kid like Cormac.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about with this North Carolina team, and a lot of people are fretting a little bit about the 7 for 20 from 3-pointers or 15 for 23 from the free throw line. It's one game, but I don't think folks are going to have to worry about the intensity level that this team brings. Granted, seasons get long and guys get tired, but that's what I've noticed. Whether it was in practice, and the little bit of practice we got to see. Hearing about the secret scrimmage, hearing about other things, Dewey, is the intensity that this team brings, and I think depth is a big part of that. Your thoughts on in that regard? I mean, it's lacked a few times over the last couple of
Yeah.
years, honestly, and this year I don't see that as an issue, at least going into it.
Well, that'd be good. I mean, we talked just now about how Harrison has maybe something to prove. You probably can tell a story if you want, almost about each of the guys in the rotation that could have something to prove. RJ and Armando have something to prove after the way last year went. Um, Withers has something to prove. He's a transfer. Wojcik has something to prove. Wojcik has to prove he can play at this level. He played in the Ivy League. I grew up around the Ivy League. The ACC is a couple steps up, maybe 3 steps. We talked about Harrison. Cadeau has something to prove coming to college early and proving that he's as good as they say. Seth Trimble has something to prove after not getting a ton of minutes and struggling certainly offensively last year. And so Coach Davis has something to prove, right? So do they kind of all have that mentality? And when you combine that with, we do have a ton of experience. These transfers that came in have all been around a while. Armando's 5th year, RJ's 4th year. I mean, we've got a ton of experience. And so we talk about this all the time. You should never have to coach effort, but certainly when you're an upperclassman, 5th year guy, you understand the level that you have to bring it from an intensity level. So the fact that we've got like 6 of those guys, ought to lend itself to what you said, which is they may not always shoot the ball well. They may turn the ball over like we did a little bit tonight, and other teams may hit tough shots, but ideally never question their effort. And if they play with a chip, hey, that's great. Yeah, then that would feel different than the last couple of years, as you said.
Yeah, folks watching this, of course, have followed it. But if you look at, Jalen Withers came from one of the worst teams in college basketball history last year. He's got that. He wants to win. Cormac Ryan was, Stanford and Notre Dame didn't have great years when he was there. He wants to win. Okonkwo even at West Virginia wasn't as good as they thought they would be. So you've got that, and of course,
like has Cormac Ryan played in the NCAA tournament?
Ever, I don't know, but I know that only two people on this team have played. I think only two people on the roster have played in the NCAA tournament. Period.
Okay. So Cormac Ryan is in his fifth year or sixth year, right? He's in his sixth year in college basketball. He's never played in the NCAA tournament.
Think about it. Yeah, and we could be off, but if he has played, or if they have played, they haven't played much, and they certainly don't know the taste that Dewey Burke got when he was on the roster at Carolina. Dewey, let's talk about this. And folks, this is the Inside Carolina postgame. 350 people in here. Shout out to everybody that's joined us. Just crazy. Brandon McLean in the chat. I'm going to give him first dibs on a question. And this is, remember, his first game. But what defensive changes do they need to make moving forward? Hard to tell were there mistakes or Radford just hitting tough shots. What did you see defensively tonight, Dewey?
Yeah, I think in the first half, as I said before, and as he notes, they hit a bunch of tough shots, especially the little guard, fall away 8-footers, and just they made some tough shots, and teams will do that. And teams tend to do that in the Smith Center in the first half. They're so excited to be in that gym, and it is a good shooter's gym. And so that happens. That's happened for 20 years. We switched everything on the perimeter, which we didn't do all the time last year. We did that some. We had more conceded effort to send ball screens down to the corner, kind of playing it NBA style. And they actually were switching 1 through 5, which was interesting, but is an indication to me of Hubert and the staff's confidence that all 5 guys can guard anybody on there. They don't care, right? We'll switch them all, especially late in the shot clock when Radford ran a couple high ball screens, sub 7 seconds, and we just switched them. And so that's a different way of defending. Coach Williams was not that way. Not saying one's better than the other, just different. And so they were actively and aggressively switching. I thought we locked down a little bit better in the second half. You need to box out a little bit better. I believe when I looked, Radford out-rebounded us for the game. Is that right? Should never happen. I believe that's correct.
Carolina ended up 37-34, but you're right. It was they had 11 offensive rebounds for Radford.
Right. Yeah, so that's inexcusable. I mean, that's hustle and that's missing box outs and things like that you can coach up. So too early after one game. I appreciate the question to give you adjustments, but just the observations I gave you about the switching and the ball screen play and I do think, and you mentioned this, I think you were talking about as an interview, but both Harrison and Cormac communicate very well on the floor. That was very evident because actually RJ and Armando are quieter. They've never been really vocal, even on the floor, even when I've watched practice. And some guys just aren't. Both of those guys are very vocal. I mean, you saw sometimes when they came into the huddle, Cormac was the one talking amongst the 5 of them, not RJ. Which you would say the guy who's been here 4 months maybe wouldn't be the one talking versus the guy who's been here 4 years. And so with communication comes better defense and better cohesiveness. So we'll see.
Yeah, and of course the chat always is correct. Cormac Ryan did play an NCAA tournament, and
okay, I wasn't sure, but it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't a long run.
He went for 29 and beat Alabama. I think they got the Sweet 16 this year, but not a ton of experience. Let's put it that way. And certainly last year, to your point, remains all these guys have a chip. Anything to close us out, Dewey? This has been a crazy first post-game podcast. 357 people here. North Carolina wins 86-70. Hadn't really talked about Elliot Cadeau other than think you said he looked like a freshman point guard. What'd you think of the starting lineup? I personally like it because I think you need somebody like that off the bench. But what'd you think about Cadeau and maybe the lineups you saw?
Yeah, with his talent level and his burst and the recommitment to playing with pace, he's going to play a ton, whether he starts or not. With Wojcik, you have more shooting. With Cadeau, you have more explosiveness and pace. But yeah, like we said, he looked like a freshman at times. I do think he might have turned the ball over the first three times he touched it, and then had some beautiful passes. And you see his vision. As I said, you see the burst and his ability to get to the rim and be aggressive about going to the rim. And even the little step back that a couple dribble step back and then he got fouled, but then he made the shot anyway that didn't count, gives you a glimpse. But it will take him some time. Ty Lawson didn't start the first couple games. Bobby started until he got hurt. And, so it remains to be seen, but he's gonna have a lot to say and factor into how this team goes. And the more that he can create off the ball and create shots for others, I love that. If they can defend, I love the idea of him creating easy opportunities for RJ, because RJ can score at all three levels. He's good at the rim, he's good in the mid-range, and he's good from three. But it's hard when you're the facilitator to also get a lot of good looks for yourself. RJ does a good job of it because he's naturally a scorer, but it should be easier for him off the ball. So it'll be interesting to see how many minutes those guys play together and if they can defend.
That last point, I think that you just made, they need to be able to defend. I think we've seen in the past teams would try to pick on RJ a little bit. Cadeau's roughly that same size. It'll be interesting to see how they combat that. It would help if Bacot or Jalen Washington or somebody can be a rim protector to bail those guys out. But Dewey, I think it was a good start. I think you get a good win against a decent team. I think Radford will be a decent team all year. They've got some players, and North Carolina ends up 86-70. Hubert Davis's first win in year 3. Dewey, my man, it's always a pleasure. Appreciate you taking the time.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Yep. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt, of course, 10% off if you're a premium subscriber, and shout out to Congruity HR. We'll be back all year for post games, and of course, stay tuned for Inside Carolina's crazy content. North Carolina over Radford.